G'day, guys and gal. When you close your eyes and imagine which Primarchs could eviscerate you with their pinky and then violate your remains, Guilliman probably isn't the first Primarch that comes to mind. Each Primarch was designed to be equal in the way that they were given the same amount of attention and power in their creation. Well, creating a Primarch is more of an art than a science, it seems, because some Primarchs, Sanguinius, are much better than others, Lorgar. From a combat perspective, Primarchs like the Lion and Angron come to mind as powerhouses, whereas Guilliman definitely just does not. But badassery doesn't come from talent or skill. Badassery comes from pushing yourself above and beyond, surprising people with your tenacity and ferocity, and basically achieving above what is expected of you. The guardsman that stood in front of the Emperor to protect him from Horus wasn't a very good fighter. If anything, he was a bit of a spurg. But his actions, although led to his horrific death, were extremely badass and convinced the Emperor not to give up. When you think of Guilliman, you think of a big blue nerd who is always super stern, a bit of a goody two-shoes who doesn't lose his cool. Well, today I'm about to rock your world, baby, and show you that Guilliman is an absolute beast and makes all the naysayers that tease him all the time look like silly little monkeys. If it wasn't obvious by my strange language at this point, I'm not allowed to swear until the 3-minute mark of this video. Let's get into it. When the Emperor wanted to clap the galaxy's cheeks, he created 20 demigod super soldiers using some incredibly questionable methods, including, but not limited to, wanking into a tube and then stealing power from the gods of hell. Each of his children, called Primarchs, were designed to represent one or more of his aspects of his character. For example, Magnus was the Emperor's thirst for knowledge and psychic prowess, Rogel Dawn was his unbreakable will, and Lorgar was his deep and regrettable taste for choir boys. Guilliman was his administration and practicality. Whilst this wasn't as exciting as Sanguinius' wings or Corvus' ability to become invisible, it was by far the most effective. So when the gods of chaos yeeted the baby Primarchs across the galaxy by taking advantage of the Primarch's mother's postnatal depression, Guilliman was the one who succeeded the most. By the time he was found, he'd already created a star-spanning empire. Did you hear that, Angron? A whole empire. For the most part, that is what Guilliman is known for, his immaculate tax returns. Everyone knows Guilliman is effective, but this isn't what this video is about. It wouldn't be a really fun video if it was titled Guilliman is Effective Warhammer 40k Lore. His badassery comes from the fact that despite being chosen as the administrator, he pushes himself to become a demigod of war, making even the most insane berserkers of Khorne no fear, and regularly challenging and even beating creatures significantly more powerful than he. I'm now going to go through and explain every moment of Guilliman's that show him as the monster I want you to see him as, not just the privileged white Aryan kid that we love to tease. A lot of Guilliman's reputation as an administrator was from the Great Crusade. There was not much need for him to go beast mode, even though he still did it on occasion, such as when he led the Ultramarines in massacring some powerful Xenos, with G-Man personally performing a gnarly fatality on their leader. It was not until the beginning of the Great Crusade that we begin to see the dark suppressed side of Guilliman's rage, more or less kicking off because of Lorgar, that creepy pedo fuck. The first moment of, oh hey there Robolt, was when Lorgar was throwing a tanty and smashed his huge ass mace into Guilliman when Guilliman was blowing up Lorgar's favourite city because he was being too religious. Instead of losing his cool or even blocking the attack, Guilliman just gets up and asks Lorgar if he's done being a bitch. Nice. Sometime later, when Lorgar had accepted Hell as his new dad, he launched a surprise attack against the Ultramarines. Now it did take Guilliman a bit of time to realise what the fuck was going on. The thought that half the Primarchs were now evil was a strange thought indeed. As such, Guilliman was broadcasting a message that said, "Yo, we are friendly, stop shooting us, you retards." But when he realised it wasn't an accident, he changed the message to, "Lorgar is a kitty fiddling fuck who needs to eat shit and die." As soon as he changed the message, Lorgar gave him a call and basically gave him the old villain monologue, where they act really cocky and tell the other person their entire plan for no specific reason other than to gloat. During the call, Guilliman drops his cold and calm demeanour and straight up tells Lorgar that he's going to get violently sodomized to death. Lorgar replies by being a bad sport and blowing up the command bridge where Guilliman is, knocking G-Man into space without his helmet. But that's just a minor inconvenience for the giant blue daddy, as he then proceeds to run around space, screaming in the void whilst pulverizing word bearers left, right and center in a shower of violence and death. G-Man then re-enters his ship and begins a counterattack. Now generally, a Guilliman counterattack would be him sitting in a bunker giving calculated and precise orders whilst Eldar Pawn plays on a different monitor. That is more or less what Lorgar was expecting. I mean, I guess he was expecting Guilliman being blown up and thrown into space to be somewhat fatal, but this would be plan B. Guilliman instead was like, fuck this, and he went against his nature. He personally led an elite strike team from the front as they attack various heavily defended positions in order to gain the upper hand in the battle. There is a scene where a bunch of word bearers, including the powerful Gal Vorbak, were guarding an important location. Guilliman pops in with a handful of Ultramarines, and they begin charging at the more numerous group of word bearers as they scream in rage and anger. The word bearers are so shocked that even the Gal Vorbak feel fear, the Gal Vorbak being demon marines. None of them raise their guns in time, and Guilliman gets to them and begins tearing them limb from limb in a massacre. It was seriously epic and very unexpected. Like, that's something Leman or Angron would do, as they were made to be ferocious. This new side of Guilliman allowed the Ultramarines to repel the word bearers. What should have been the destruction of the Ultramarine Legion turned into a slaughter of word bearers. To an extent. Both sides got pretty fucked hard here. Now after this, Guilliman could and usually would have spent time regrouping and analysing the situation, thinking about the next move and the bigger picture. But Guilliman had unleashed the beast and all he wanted was revenge, so he put together the most patchwork makeshift fleet of ships that was still somewhat functional and begun chasing Lorgar, revenge burning in his pants. Eventually he catches up to Lorgar, who is buddied up with Angron. They get caught because Angron and Lorgar arrived at Angron's home planet, you know, the one that he couldn't conquer, you know, because he was the only Primarch who was unable to conquer his own planet, you know, because he fucking sucks. Angron was taking too long having a cry and messing about, hence the Ultramarines led by their mightily pissed off Aryan overlord arrived. Lorgar and Angron had their capital ships and fleets of 2 legions. Guilliman had a ragtag team of ships that had been thrown together at the last minute. Take a guess who ended up winning the space battle. Guilliman's forces were able to destroy Lorgar's capital ship and nearly took over Angron's via boarding. G-Man was then able to blast a hole in the trader's fleet and land on the planet, where he immediately charged at Lorgar and the 2 fought. I would say at this point, Lorgar's power level was higher. He had accepted his psychic gifts, been powered up by chaos, and had fought against Corvus and numerous other space marines. Despite this, I would say Guilliman actually came out on top. It really depends which hit you count as harder, either G-Man's uppercut which shattered Lorgar's sternum and crushed his ribs, or Lorgar's mace to Guilliman's face which tore off half of it. Even though the damage is comparable, Guilliman ate that mace hit like it was nothing. He was even then able to hold off Angron for a time despite that injury, being exhausted and Angron being Angron. He only made the decision to finally fall back when Angron turned into a big-ass angry demon. You know, that's a decision I can really get behind. If he had stayed, he wouldn't have been a badass, he just would have been a retard. Did I mention that Guilliman was stabbed with the same knife that was used to mortally wound then turn Horus to chaos? And you know what Guilliman's reaction was? It was, "Oi, dickhead, don't do that," before then punching a hole through the man who stabbed him and walking off the injury. Sometime after this, Guilliman is in a position where he believes the Emperor is dead and the traitors have won, as he wasn't able to receive communications from Terra due to Warp Spaghetti. Does he despair and go into hiding? Does he join Chaos to save himself? No. The Mad Lad sets up Imperium 2.0 and guides Sanguinius and the Lion to him to prepare to wage a new war against Chaos. Despite setting this all up, as soon as he hears that his father is alive, he ditches everything and charges back to Terra, giving Sanguinius the opening to get back there in time and kind of save the day. Post-Heresy, Guilliman was the only Primarch that was sensible enough to administer and rebuild the Imperium, while the rest of these loyalist brothers were chasing suicidal vendettas. Looking at you, Rogel. It takes a lot of restraint and willpower not to give in to the rage and desire to seek revenge. Unfortunately, G-Man allowed himself to get outplayed and fatally wounded by Fulgrim, which is a bit embarrassing, but even then he was still being a badass. He knew Fulgrim was the better fighter, but if only he could hold a Fulgrim for long enough, his fleet could have won the battle. Unfortunately, Bobby G didn't account for the fact that Fulgrim now had 4 arms and 6 tits, hence Bobby G suffered a fatal knife wound to the neck and died. But he survived! After 10,000 years of stasis, some Eldar death voodoo combined with some mad science brought the big boy back, and not a second too late. When Guilliman was revived, Chaos was invading his homeworld, and they were only meters away from him. You should really read the excerpt of when Guilliman was revived, it's extremely badass, and I'm going to adjust this here, but basically once he stood up, the entire room, dozens of warriors, most of whom were insane, stopped fighting. Everyone was completely shocked until a Cornite berserker Leroy Jenkins himself at Guilliman was bisected for his efforts. Guilliman then takes a moment to look at his surroundings before then charging into the crowd and more or less single-handedly kills the entire Chaos army. You gotta remember that Chaos during the Heresy is very different from Chaos in 40k. Guilliman woke up with the Eldar as his allies, Space Marine sons he doesn't know, and way more gnarly Chaos Marines. To him, he was stabbed in the neck and blacked out, only to wake up to an intense battle all around him, which he then absolutely rocked. When he drove Chaos out of his home, he was tricked into putting on a Slaaneshi crown. The crown was supposed to corrupt whoever wore it, but after a couple seconds, Guilliman removed it and had the Slaaneshi spy arrested. After this, he entered in an absolute fiesta of a journey to Terra, where Magnus and his forces of Titsnitch were trying to fuck him every step of the way. When he finally got to the moon next to Terra, Magnus popped out and attacked him. Magnus, a massive red magic demon against our boy. Magnus threw a building at Guilliman, set him on fire, and was just an all-round shitty brother. In return, Guilliman was able to break Magnus's jaw, and with the help of some Eldar and Sisters of Silence, banish his brother back to the warp. Phew! Finally, Guilliman be home. He can have a breather. No, he can't, because a fuck-huge demon army of Khorne has rocked up and Guilliman is back to battle. Guilliman is able to lead the Imperium to victory and defeat the armies of Khorne. Now he can rest, right? Well, maybe, but he doesn't! He completely purges Terra of Xenos, mutants, and Chaos cults before then reforming the Imperium and mustering the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen for 10,000 years. With this fleet, he purges half the galaxy, delivering reinforcements everywhere he can. The Imperium went from the brink of collapse to thriving despite how many threats it faced. Guilliman only left the Crusade when his other evil brother, yes, he's got a couple of those, Morty, invaded his home. Guilliman once again stood up to and fought off his brother, despite his brother being heavily empowered by Chaos. Throughout all of this, Rub Me Off Gorilla Man has been able to maintain a sense of humour. It's not a very good sense of humour, but it's the effort that counts. Guilliman isn't the strongest, fastest, or most skilled Primarch. He's not even close, yet I would say he has the most conviction and will. All the other Primarchs more or less just follow their design. Guilliman is able to break from this and push himself to new heights without becoming a Mary Sue. He makes mistakes and miscalculations. He loses duels and gets his ass kicked, but he comes back stronger every time. Being a badass isn't about punching someone, it's about taking a punch then getting back up. I'm really hoping Guilliman is able to get his revenge against Lorgar. A scene I hope for would be where Guilliman tracks down Lorgar and beats the shit out of him, but he gets held back with Psyker powers as Lorgar opens up an escape portal. Before Lorgar escapes, he mocks Guilliman. However, as he's mocking him, Corvus Corax emerges from the escape portal and impales Lorgar, holding him in place as Guilliman walks up and kills Lorgar permanently with his flaming sword. This means Corvus and Guilliman getting their revenge, and it allows Corvus to re-enter the setting. I think that would be cool. And that does us for today, guys. Why Guilliman is an absolute beast. I'm just trying to do my part and make people realize that Matt Ward hasn't worked for GW for about 7 years now, and it's okay to like Ultramarines and Guilliman. They become one of my favourite chapters, and now you might see why. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more beastly content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.